Welcome. I know that you're wondering to yourself, this is not the normal format. Usually Dave says something a little bit snarky, says, hey, let's answer the question. A thing snaps on his finger, and then there's a jaunty song. We're pulling out all the stops. We've had a heck of a year. We're staring down at 2023. We're saying, what is coming? But it's the time of year for a little introspection, a little looking back. So I've put together a crack team of SEO nerdery.
Yes.
To my right, I have Megan Farrell, technical SEO specialist.
That is me.
To my left, I have Emily Taub. She is technical SEO operations manager. Mm-hmm. Both full of opinions, full of knowledge, and we're going to wring every last drop of them. I have tasked them with looking at 2022 and coming up with a short list of the big things that happened, also what they mean to you, that's you dealers, and what they can do about it. All right? What is looking back without looking forward? So, without further ado, let's get into it. Megan.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Let's see. I've been doing SEO for about 3 years, technical SEO for about 2.5.
Awesome.
That's the most interesting thing about me. So
we love it.
That's all you get.
What's your favorite thing about SEO?
That it's a challenge and you learn something new literally every single day.
That's true. That's true. It's hard to know it all.
You will never know it all.
No matter what anybody says. Emily.
Hello.
What's going on?
Not too much. We're just chilling.
Give us a little read on you. Who are you?
I'm Emily. I've been here with Wikimotive for a little over a year. Mm-hmm. And killing it. Loving that SEO life. And yeah, I agree. There's always something new. There's always something changing, which is why it's so fun to do something like this, where we can look back and see how much things have changed in just a year. So
we all recognize that actually, like, summing up an entire year in SEO is essentially impossible. So we've applied a little bit of a format here. I've asked each of these panel members to come up with a few things that they think are real standout items that people should be aware of. Obviously, we're not going to be able to cover it all because, frankly, there's not enough coffee in the world for someone to sit through that video. But I think we kept it to what, 3 things for each?
Yeah, more or less.
Things, and we ended up sharing one. So
yeah.
Yep.
Turns out SEO not big on counting, so we're not gonna fuss around with it.
No numbers.
Megan, you want to start us off? What's your number 3? We're gonna do a
Sure.
countdown. 3, 2, 1. Everybody loves a countdown. We're looking at you, NASA. Keep up the good work, guys.
All right. My number 3 was the May core update to Google's algorithm, which actually had 2 separate parts. And the first one that I thought was really interesting was the video visibility and how videos are now going to be ranking better on Google than maybe some other things. A really strong emphasis on visuals. And then the other part about that update was that transactional queries are now going to have a type of grid that's going to show up and kind of show people, here are your options for buying that thing you're interested in buying, and here are the different prices, which makes it so much easier to find something cost effective. Sure. I mean, they're going to show, okay, the place you might have gone to get this is charging $5 more for it, so you should go here instead, and you can pretty much shop right on Google.
Oh, that's interesting.
So making it a lot easier to compare things across the board.
Right. You don't have to do nearly as much research on other websites. You can do it right on Google.
So here's the burning question. I own a Honda dealership. What does that mean to me?
Well, here's a question for you.
Oh, shit.
I turned it around on you. How do you think this could impact car dealers? Do you think that this could be something done for cars?
She flipped it around on me. I think this is great for, like, e-commerce sites.
For sure.
Right? Like, totally makes sense.
If you want a paintbrush, you want the cheapest paintbrush.
I mean, I'm just going to Amazon for that. But, you know, if I'm looking for a specific pair of boots or the new Jordans, like, that grid totally helps me out because it's easy to cross-shop.
Yeah.
I think with cars, it's a little bit different.
Well, there are so many different details about every car. I mean, there are almost no two cars that are exactly the same.
Sure.
If you want a specific color, you want a specific trim, you want a specific feature in the car, it's going to come down to, okay, what is the closest dealership to me that actually has this?
Right. And even if you were to find the same specs in two cars in two different dealerships, dealership pricing isn't always the most uniform, transparent, dare I say. It can be a little bit hard to compare, one dealer's, markdowns or another's incentives with, OEM incentives. I mean, you've got a lot of different factors at play there.
Right.
So that can make it tricky.
Sure.
I definitely agree.
And I think, if you get into the incredible catalog of rebates and discounts that can be offered for so many different things.
Right.
That's where finding a good salesperson is really going to save you money. Like, they're going to know the different things that can apply to that situation. They, if they're really doing their job, and most of them do, because, they want to make that sale. If they can save you $500 if you're a member of the American Barrel Racing Society on your F-350, like, they're going to do that. That doesn't cost them anything. All they've done is made it seem like, hey, they're really looking out for me. They're saving me some money.
Yep.
I think that's a hard thing to capture in a tool like a grid.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep, it's one of those examples of it's a time when that human interaction and you can't really replace that with AI or with little data points.
No matter how much people are trying to do that.
Right. It's not going to keep us from trying, but
like how would you distill that down to a grid?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. But the video part, like, what does that mean? How are we going to see changes with that?
I mean, that just means that creating videos and content for your dealership, it's just going to become more and more important.
Sure.
I mean, we see that TikTok is becoming a huge thing, and even TikToks will show up in Google search.
Really?
So, I mean, getting some video content, whether it's on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook videos, anything, it can help you rank.
Interesting. Being old.
Old.
I old enough. I'm not big on the whole the TikTok. But I can certainly see things like YouTube videos and even just short clips being something that could be pretty advantageous for a dealership that is willing to put in the time, right?
Right. And they say, boomers learn from Facebook articles. Well, Gen Z is learning from TikTok videos.
Sure.
Yep.
So
That's an important thing. And I suppose we'll worry about Gen Z more when they actually have money to buy cars.
Oh.
I am Gen Z and I do have a car.
Generation.
I'll have it known.
All right, moving on. Emily.
All right.
Number 3.
My number 3 thing is something that just came out, which is continuous scrolling on desktop experiences from Google. This is something that we've seen on mobile for a while. Not having to click at the bottom of the page to continue to the next page of results. And they've just rolled this out to when you're on a desktop, looking at that search engine result page. So that's a very interesting development to me. And we don't really know yet what that's going to we know what it looks like. We don't know exactly what impact it's going to have, but we can take some interesting guesses from that development.
Ooh, take a guess.
Guesses.
Guess.
I'm guessing my takeaway from this is that for folks who are already ranking in the top few positions on that search engine page, this is going to be honestly kind of a bummer.
Okay.
It's gonna not have a huge effect, but it makes those first positions a little bit less valuable, a little bit less crucial.
So you think people will continue scrolling past?
I think they're going to be more inclined to continue scrolling, and they won't realize when they've scrolled past what would have been the old page break, and they're suddenly on what would have been page 2. And anybody who hasn't been ranking up on page 1, this is going to be huge because suddenly you're getting more visibility from people who are not scared to click on the next page button. You know, that's always been sort of a do not enter sign, do not pass go, do not collect $200.
Sure.
So I think that can make a big difference for those folks.
It's kind of interesting to me that, we've had that mobile, like I can scroll all day long without having to push a thing for a long time.
Yeah.
And like search engines have realized like, hey, having to push to go to another page is an annoying thing. But then they delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed, actually applying this to desktop searches. And we all know that Google's whole thing, like they make money off of advertising. If they can keep you on the search engine results page, they get more time looking at those ads. That's worth revenue. That's an important thing for them. And since it's such a big profit place for them, I'm curious what the math was where they were saying, look, we need people to have a good experience, but that we also need them to see the ads. If you just scroll where the ads show up. Because typically at the bottom of page 1, you would have another set of ads.
Right.
And then if you hit page 2, you could potentially be served another set of ads.
Right. So were they holding off because they wanted that extra revenue?
I don't know. It's an interesting thing, and I'm sure that they probably spent a long time discussing it and what it would mean, because there's got to be a trade-off balance.
Right, because now they're keeping people on there even longer, especially when they add in the videos and the grids and everything else. It's almost becoming like social media. People are just going to sit there and scroll and look at things.
Yep, you've got all those rich results at the top. You've got your snippets.
Right, you can just get anything you need right on Google.
Yeah. So does that outweigh the loss of that second page,
with
re-up
more
of ads?
Yeah. Right.
Well, it probably means if they can keep you, if they've got the videos, they've got the grids, those are things that are going to be on page 1.
Right.
Like they're not going to say, hey, we're going to sneak these further down.
Exactly.
You'll get to them eventually. Like that, I think, might be the balance point where they keep the attention up where you're also seeing the ads still.
Right, because it's still going to display on your screen while you're watching the video or reading the snippet.
And we've seen the people also ask stuff. Like Google's obviously leveraging to keep people on that search engine results page.
Right.
Whether this necessarily benefits people who are writing this content or making those videos or the e-commerce sites. Like the e-commerce site does well if you click through on that grid and you actually buy the thing.
Right.
But if you're not, it's like, oh, shoot. And suddenly I have to compete with everybody that Google can come up with.
Right.
For this inventory. And they have to. This is already a big thing. Like, I worked at e-commerce doing SEO. Like, keeping track of your inventory and having that database uploaded to Google all the time, that is not a small undertaking if you have any size catalog.
Right.
So, like, the pressure is really on for e-commerce. And I can see eventually Google finding a way for this to apply to cars. Like, there's going to be some weird nuance. Like, it's going to be based off of MSRP or something.
Right. And they'll just show them, and then once you actually click on it to buy it, then they'll give you the more details.
Yes. Yeah. And so, like, that's going to apply additional pressure on auto dealers to keep their inventory feeds looking squeaky clean. Because so often today, like, we see this among our own clients, if they sell a car, sometimes that listing will stay up on the website.
Right.
Or it'll be taken off the website, but it'll still be crawlable for days, weeks. Sometimes, something will slip through. And like, they're going to have to really be on top of scrubbing their data and ensuring that feed is squeaky clean.
Definitely.
Great point.
Yeah. They're very interesting.
Yeah. The mobile experience is turning into the desktop experience. Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art?
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
The dinosaur.
So the chicken.
Yes.
Suppose.
Unless the dinosaur egg turned into a chicken.
Yeah, no, this is the whole problem.
Speaking of which came first, we're wondering which came second on your list.
Good transition, Dave.
It's called a segue.
Number 2 on my list was actually the desktop page experience update to Google's algorithm, so core web vitals are something that we've looked a lot at, especially when we get a new client.
Sure. What are they?
Core web vitals are pretty much user experience. So when someone clicks on your website, how long is it taking to load? Are things moving around on the page? Are they going to try and click on something and then it's going to suddenly move? And then also intrusive interstitials, which are fun pop-ups.
All right.
Not fun.
Everybody loves the interstitial / pop-up.
Yep. Yeah. I love when I click on a page and instantly I can't click on anything until I agree to their terms and, you know, all that stuff. So actually now websites that do not have those things, or they have good core web vital scores and they do not have intrusive interstitials, those will be ranking better. But they will not be penalizing people for having poor core web vitals. However, if you have poor core web vitals, you're likely going to get pushed down.
Sure. So it's more of a carrot than a stick?
Exactly.
They're going to reward the good behavior versus punishing the bad?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then everybody else is going to be sad that they don't have carrots. So they're going to have to.
It's important for your eye health.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for dealers, though? Like,
well,
what's the bottom line here? What's the takeaway?
Well, like I said, we do a lot. We look a lot, especially when we get a new client at Core Web Vitals, and we see a lot of issues with things that unfortunately we can't fix because they are things that the dealer pays for outside of us. So maybe the chat box, and they're paying another vendor for that, and that's causing issues. I mean, it might move around a lot on the page when it's loading, and that we just can't fix it. But the dealers need to be aware of this. So we're trying to put together that information for them so that they can go back to their site provider or their tool provider and say, hey, our website is now performing poorly because of the thing that you are selling us. And that's going to be important with this update because if you don't fix those things, you might start seeing some significant drops.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's really tempting to want to put that pop-up there that says like, hey, give us your info. We'll send you, you know, $500 off your purchase. On paper, it might look like a great idea. In practice, it's just going to bounce customers right off your site.
Sure.
You know, they see that, they're out of there, and now Google is going to put some weight behind that and really say, listen, we don't want you to do this.
Right. So now you might not even get the initial click at all.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is almost like the continuous scrolling thing, right? A thing that had been applied to mobile for a while is now getting applied to desktop.
Right. This was a thing on mobile about a year ago, rolled out, and now they're applying it to desktop.
And I don't think that we've seen, because same sort of approach, the carrot versus the stick. Like, we have seen sites that perform well, do well in general.
Right.
We haven't necessarily, especially in the auto dealer industry, seen a lot of mix-up there because a lot of dealers use the same tools or they have similar platforms. And they're all about the same level of
bad.
Not what we would love. We're not going to say it's a mess, but there's certainly room for improvement.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, there are a lot of, you know, the frequent sinners that we see are the chat tools at the bottom of the page, and that button, as the page is loading in, that button's doing the jig.
Yep.
And that can be a really hard buying experience. Like, you're going through this, you're like, I'd like to... Nope.
I'm trying to chat with you.
It's the digital whack-a-mole. I suppose you could gamify it, you know, and click the chat bot and get a chance to actually talk to us and get the information you're looking for. You know, there's a lot of ways in which auto dealers can apply a little bit of pressure to these tool providers and to these platforms to do a better job, but they have to be armed with the data and the details to know what is the focus and what's the priority level. No dealership is going to have time to delineate this information themselves.
Definitely not.
Like, we have our own Core Web Vitals document that we do for every client when they start with us. That's an internal document. That's for us to go through and say, what are the things that we can change? What are the things that we see as potential pitfalls? If we see something big, we can highlight it to the client and say, hey, client, this is a big one. Like, you should reach out to this tool provider and ask them to try to straighten this out.
Right.
I think the actual, like, the number of times I've seen the client be able to go to that tool provider and actually get them to change it is like twice in 3 years.
Right.
There's this reticence of the tools and platforms to make these changes because it's costly to them.
Yep.
They don't necessarily see the benefit, and previously it hasn't really hurt.
Right.
Yep.
Even now it's not hurting, it's just because there's no punishment, there's only reward for doing it well.
Yeah.
And they're going to take a look around at all these other platforms and tools, and they're going to say, these guys have the same problem. I don't need to improve to still be on the same ground as them.
Yeah.
Conversely, this is an opportunity for the tool providers and the platforms to say, all I have to do is do this a little bit better than the rest, and my platform is going to shine.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the Core Web Vitals reports are so easy to pull. Like, Google does not make it difficult to pull this
not at
information.
all.
They're not hiding this data.
No.
It would be so easy for them to make some changes and make that investment and be able to advertise that investment. Like, can you imagine if we could go out there and point to every one of our competitors and say, I can observably tell you that we are 10% better?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what an incredible sales tool and what an incredible opportunity that these tool providers and platforms are passing up on, and that I'm hoping they will sort of get on the bandwagons, or like, hey guys, if we invest now, we can reap the benefits.
Yep.
Yeah, you can really, there's an opportunity to build some real loyalty there
Sure.
with their customer base, because we see our clients popping from one tool provider to another, or from one platform to another, and it's like, they're obviously looking for something that they're not getting from their current provider.
Still haven't found what they're looking for.
No.
This also represents, I think, an opportunity for us. I mean, we're an SEO company. Like, we don't provide a platform. We don't provide a tool that just lives on your site.
Right.
But us as SEO professionals, we need to develop our own way of advertising and making it super, super easy for our clientele to get on the phone and just be armed for bear
Yep.
for a conversation with these tool providers and be like, look, man, I know exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
I've got screen captures of everything as my website is loading, and I can see myself as a layman exactly where things are not going great.
Right.
And these things are advertised as you because it's in the back end. Like, you can't hide your code. So that's an opportunity for us. I think that's going to be a big thing of our 2023 push, is like, how do we really enable our clientele to have these conversations as easily as possible and get them the best results?
Yep.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Sure is.
You know what's also powerful? I'm sure your number 2 choice is.
So powerful.
Oh my God.
Wait till you
segue.
hear it. Have you guys heard about what happened with the iOS user location data? You probably have.
We have.
I don't know.
I didn't know what answer
Emily,
you wanted me to give.
We are all professionals here, please.
Well, what I'm going to say is it's gone, essentially. So Wikimotive, we I know, blockbuster headline.
Yeah.
We were one of the first companies to really sort of notice this shift and write about it back in late May, early summer. There was an update to the mobile Safari app that Apple uses, and instead of having users opt into obscuring their IP address, they were automatically opted in. And so that basically took away any visibility that anybody had of where these people were, where they were coming from, where they were searching from, how they were getting, were they in market? Were they out of market? So we suddenly saw this big drop in these smaller geolocations, and we saw a jump in these like real broad, New York City, Chicago, LA. When if you're a dealer in Texas and suddenly you've got a bunch of traffic coming from Chicago, you start to wonder what's going on here, and you've lost that granular breakdown of where your traffic is actually coming from. So this was a really big loss in visibility for our data that was available to us.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What does this mean to dealerships?
I'm so glad you asked that.
Let's cut to the chase.
Why should you care?
Yeah.
Well, you've got a lot of content on your site. You've got a lot of inventory. You want people to come and buy cars. That's the end game.
Sure.
If you've got some folks who are coming and reading some content and then leaving, you want to know why. And the reason might be that they're from far outside of your market area. Without this data, you don't know that anymore. You just see, wow, there's like I'm getting a bunch of traffic, but like my sales aren't increasing. Like it's not looking any better for me. You can't parse that data to find out what's going wrong and where. You know, you want to be able to pinpoint where your traffic is coming from so that you know where you're doing well and where you need to target better and focus on more.
Let's do a quick poll. Apple phone users?
I'm Apple.
What about our crack production staff? Apple. We got two more apples.
So 3 out of 5.
Meanwhile, the apples versus the oranges. I know that Emily is an Android and I am an Android. So even in this room, that's 3/5 of your data.
Yeah.
That suddenly you don't have granular geographic location on that you used to be able to rely on.
Yep.
To say that that is a major shift.
That's an understatement.
It's such an incredible understatement. Like, knowing where your traffic is coming from is one of those sort of bedrock things for judging whether any of your marketing is working. This is PPC, this is display, this is social media.
Right.
And suddenly having that information obfuscated, man, it wasn't a great week here as we were trying to figure out. Like, we started to see these weird anomalies in the data.
Yep.
And of course, it turned into all hands on deck. Like, let's pour over this. What is going on that we're seeing this in such a widespread way? And we dug down and we found that. And it's like, oh.
At least there was a reason for it.
Yeah. I mean, it's way better to be able to find the reason than to have this mystery hanging over you, or why so much of your data.
And to know that it's happening to everyone.
Yeah. Everybody got universally harmed.
Gotta love it.
So from a marketing perspective, hates it.
Personally,
I don't dislike the shift to maintaining more privacy.
I definitely don't. As an Apple user, it happened to my phone, and I'm happy about it. I don't need people to know where I am, ever.
Now, here's the question. Are you aware of anything else on your phone that you've been automatically opted into that you...
Honestly, I don't know, and I don't pay attention to what I'm opted into on my own phone.
There we go.
And no one really is.
Yeah, nobody reads the fine print. Nobody reads the terms of service. They just scroll to the bottom and they hit go.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
And they could be like, from now on, you are saying out loud to the public that you dislike puppies. And it's like, I didn't read that, but I did agree.
That's sad.
Yeah. I mean, we like the additional privacy. That's a big shift, right? Like we see all the lawsuits that are going on in the EU, and all the search engines and social media platforms are being sort of taken to task on, like, hey, you've not been super generous to your users when it comes to protecting their privacy.
Yeah.
In fact, some of you have been pretty abusive.
Not gonna name names.
But this also just highlights, like, a company the size of Apple introduced a thing that you are automatically opted into, and nobody even knew that it happened to them.
No.
Yeah.
Like, this is, by and large, for a user, probably a positive thing, but we have to be aware, like, sometimes it feels like they make the contracts long enough to make it daunting, so you're not going to read the whole thing.
Definitely.
And that's going to be an interesting thing. I can definitely foresee, like, the next round of lawsuits. We're just going to keep leapfrogging lawsuits here. The next one is going to be about those terms of services and automatic opt-in things.
Yep.
Like, we're already saying, on the browsers, it's like, this website would like to know your location. Blocked.
No.
But what if they didn't ask?
Right.
Exactly.
Right? So I think that's going to be the next round of things. Is there a workaround for being missing this data?
Honestly, there's not nothing that we have at the moment. we're still sort of looking at how else we can parse the data and, of course, leaning on all of our other resources and channels and tools. But, the only consolation is that it's gone for everybody.
Sure. I'd like to thank Android for not making
for not caring about your consumers.
I'm point on this. So the privacy talk, I think that leads into the universal number one between the two.
Definitely.
Which is, who's going to say it first?
GA4.
Oh, snap.
Was that in sync? I couldn't tell.
It was close. It was like an echo.
We'll try it again next time.
It was
Next
a
year.
small room echo.
Yeah.
GA4, what be it?
It is Google Analytics new version. Previously, we had Universal Analytics, and soon you will no longer have access to Universal, and GA4 is the only option.
How soon?
Very soon, next year. The
That's
middle
terrifying.
of next year.
Yep.
Yep.
Hey, dealerships, were you aware?
Yeah, were you aware?
Did you know that in July, that Universal Analytics will no longer collect any data? Were you aware?
Did you know?
Did you know that after October, the data just goes away?
Just gone.
So you might want to set up your GA4 now.
Yeah.
So you can have some historical data in there.
So Universal Analytics, GA4, what's the difference? Why is there a shift here?
Oh, boy. Well, there's really the reason that this ties into the sort of privacy concerns in this conversation that's ongoing globally is that Universal Analytics really relied heavily on cookies and other other types of user data that just that are becoming less and less available. We've seen the introduction of laws in the EU, and they're headed this way regarding what cookies can and can't be used for and on what sites.
And by cookies, we're not talking chocolate chip, right?
Unfortunately, no.
Yeah.
'Cause,
Sounds kind of good right now, though.
I'm all about those cookies.
Right.
But no, these are the annoying. You get all the pop-ups now. Every
Sure.
site you go to, you've got to opt in or out. And that is a result of some of what has been happening over in the EU with these laws. It's consumer protection. They are trying to protect us, the individual human users.
Sure.
But it does mean that as an SEO group, we have to look differently. Well, Google has had to look at how to gather useful data and package it for us in a way that still does what we need it to do without relying on those cookies and other things that are going away.
Okay.
Hence GA4.
Hence GA4. Yeah.
So how does GA4 operate differently then?
GA4
No cookies. I'll tell you that. No cookies for you.
Cookies are gone. Maybe some
Santa.
scones, but
Maybe a croissant?
croissant. Yeah, they're really relying on what they call events. So you're able to track a user's progress through your website, actually in a much more granular, precise, transparent way. I'm actually kind of looking forward to
potentially, right?
Potentially extremely useful.
Yeah.
I'm an optimist, know. But these events are triggered by anything that a user does on your site. So it's going to be scrolling down the page. It's going to be clicking on a link. It's going to be interacting with that chat tool. The hope is that this gives us like a lot of insight into what are people doing while they're on the site.
Sure. So it's behavioral patterns.
Yep.
Sure.
But the big thing is that because of the shift in how this information is being gathered, the data, it's a whole new platform. From Universal Analytics to GA4, it is kind of apples and oranges. So they've built this whole new platform. Your data can't transfer because it can't transform from an apple to an orange.
Right.
And that's why, big takeaway here is you should be setting up your GA4 like yesterday. You don't have to switch over to using it 24/7 yet, but the sooner that you get your data input into there, the sooner you're going to have data coming in for your year-over-year everything.
Right. And
going forward.
and it's really important to be able to look at the two before that other old data goes away, because it is going to look different.
Yeah.
It's not collecting data the same, so the numbers might look a little different. I mean, Universal Analytics would count sessions if they went past midnight twice.
Right.
So if someone was on your website shopping for a car, and their time went a little bit past midnight, then now you're seeing 2 sessions for that one person.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, if you have some late night shoppers, you might see a downtick in sessions in GA4 from Universal. And there are tons of nuances.
I know I do all my best shopping at midnight.
I actually do.
Yep.
So what are some takeaways for a dealership? Like, what if we were to give them a hit list? Like, what's number 1 on the hit list that they need to do about GA4?
Set it up. Get in there.
Sure.
Download or export your data from Google from Universal Analytics.
Yeah.
Because you want to still have access.
You still want that historical data, even if you can't have it in GA4.
That's going to be kind of a trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it turns out Universal Analytics, unless you have Google 360, Google 360 plays nice with BigQuery automatically. It's just like a native friend. They're neighbors. I'm like, hi, neighbor, can I borrow a cup of sugar? And like, yeah, will you store all my data forever?
Yay!
Universal Analytics, not so much.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of clients are going to be saying, hey, I need a solution for this. And yes, we have some things in the works. But in terms of just making sure that they're not going to lose all of that. Because after UA stops collecting data in July, UA data goes away in October, because storing all this data for every website on the planet. That data lake is deep, and it's not a free thing to store it. So Google's not interested in being like, hey, I'm just going to hold on to this for you for free.
Forever.
Thanks for existing. They're going to jettison that data, and if you don't have it, then it's just gone.
Yep.
That's going to be a tricky thing. I can say pretty confidently, after getting all of our clients set up, so we got all our clients set up in May.
Right.
And there were some things that we didn't necessarily expect when we were doing that setups. And I think the biggest one that really caught me off guard, and it's like, why is this like this? There's only 2 settings for how long GA4 will save your data.
Right.
And its default is 2 months.
That's useful.
It's wild.
You can't do anything with 2 months of data. So it defaults to 2 months, and you have to go in and select the only other option, which is 14 months.
All or nothing.
Yeah.
Just nothing.
It's like, why? Obviously, this is Google's, again, trying to save, because they're like, look, if you're not smart enough to go in and know where this setting is, then chances are you're also not going to miss that data. And also, we're giving you GA4 for free. If you don't like it, feel free to ask for your money back. But there's going to be so many people who are caught off guard by that.
Yeah.
And they're not even going to get through a full quarter without there being like a black hole at the beginning of it. It's like, oh, no. Let alone like being able to look at year-over-year data, which we consider best practice.
Yeah.
Because, seasonality, holidays, like if you just look at, well, what's this time period versus the time period exactly before that? Like, if you're looking at people's shopping right now
versus last month at this time,
versus people's shopping in September, they're not related.
Not at all.
And, as an avid supporter and celebrator of Honda holidays.
I didn't know where you were going with that. That was great.
I know that you're a Toyota thoner, but that's fine. Knowing that there's different marketing pushes now. So, like, the marketing side that understands that.
Yep.
And, like, the data has to also reflect that. Your year-over-year data is really how you figure out what's going on. And even lately, just looking at the data, like, the pandemic like shopping patterns and the way that behavior was on websites was so wildly different than pre-pandemic. So there's definitely some interesting things to glean from that year-over-year data. And it's like, all right, yes, we're coming out of pandemic, but we still have like high inflation.
Right.
And interest rates on car loans are different than they were. Like a year ago, you would have never seen General Motors offering almost anything for special APRs. Right? Like they were like, most of the cars are sold before they get to the dealership.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing like GM financing saying, hey, well-qualified people are getting 4.3 APR or even less than that. It's like the OEMs have figured out like, hey, we have to actually start competing for shoppers again. That year-over-year data is like a really important thing to be able to actually discern how that difference is making an effect. The other big thing, and I like talking about opportunities. I used to say, hey, this is a problem. And then I read a few books, and they're like, don't call them problems. Call them opportunities. People will think that you're full of hope. So the opportunity here is a thing that we never had with Universal Analytics, and that's standardization.
Yep.
Like, Universal Analytics was the Wild West for all these. Dear automotive industry, tool providers, and website platforms, please know that I don't hate you. You're all still on my Christmas card list. I am poking at you a lot lately, and that might be because you deserve it. But it's a playful poke. It has been the Wild West with all these different groups coming up with their own naming structures for every event that they would send to the data layer.
And changing them often.
Like, you could never actually be able to compare one thing against another thing because they made it really hard to do so.
Every time you check, you don't have data because something changed again.
And the thing, like, we had Universal Analytics for so long.
Right.
Like, that ship had sailed. Like, you weren't going to change that behavior. But now we've got a new thing coming in. We've got a fresh start. We've got an opportunity to have standardization of these things for the first time ever.
Please.
I was also going to say, please.
So, Wikimotive was part of the Automotive Standards Council, which was a lot of industry nerds and just stakeholders and all these different tools and platforms and stuff. Like, there was a lot on these calls coming together and saying, hey, we all agree that this is a massive opportunity for us to come up with something that is actionable and able to be reproduced without a lot of work and makes it easier for the end user. In this case, that's our clientele. That's the auto dealership themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
To be able to say, if I look at my data, I can actually tell what is going on.
That's crazy.
That's wild.
This seems like a wild ask, right? It's like, wow, we're really reaching for the stars. I would like to know what's going on, please. And like, there are a lot of groups that have already signed on and said, yes, we are going to institute these standards. And it's a really easy document. Like, it's thick, but it's essentially just choosing from a menu. It's like, if someone clicks to call service, you fire this event. The event name is this.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Boy, would that be great.
Isn't that incredible? It seems like such a simple thing that has not been managed previously. So, with every opportunity, there comes cost. Not every tool provider or site provider is signed on to this. Right? Everything's got a balance. There's a cost balance, and they've decided maybe that equation doesn't necessarily work out for us. That means that the auto dealerships are the ones that need to say, look, there's a standard. I want you to apply this standard. This will not happen without the auto dealerships actually making these phone calls.
Well, no. Why would they make a change if they didn't have to?
Yeah.
Right?
Nobody's holding them accountable.
Right.
Right. No threat. No reason to take on the cost.
Like, we as Wikimotive can say, hey, guys, like, you should really implement these things. Like, it's way better for you. And we can talk about the opportunity in, like, myriad ways that it would be a better experience for their clientele and advantageous.
They'll be like, listen to that guy.
Yeah. And they're like, Wikimotive is their competitors. So. It's the auto dealers that are going to have to put in the legwork on this. And I think that's a challenge, and I know that they're all busy.
Yeah.
But literally, this could die on the vine if the dealerships don't demand it.
Well, it's also a nice chance for the dealers to feel like they have some agency, that they are empowered. Like, hey, it's a very clear choice. I can see what should be done. I can see that you're not doing it, and I care enough. And the power is in their hands.
Sure.
So, they can also look at that as an opportunity.
Sure. It's the power of the purse, right?
Yeah, it's like shopping for car insurance.
Exactly.
You say, well, this car insurance place said that they would give me this rate,
Right.
so are you going to match it or am I going to leave?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, if you have the standards, that's a selling point.
Yep.
And the fact that as an industry we would settle for anything less than having data that we can actually look at and actually know what's
your
going on.
data is pretty much useless without it.
Yeah. Like, then you're reliant on that quarterly call with the guy who has 700 other clients that he has the same exact call with, who says, "Don't worry, I got this graph. It goes up and to the right. The arrow's green. Everything's good."
You're doing great.
It's like, if you think that you are consistently getting the truth on calls, keep doing what you're doing.
You're not.
Right? But if in the back of your head, and from the number of times that we see, because we're constantly auditing goals right now, the number of times that we see goals change, so we know that either the tool provider is changing their goal names again, or the clients are picking up new vendors because they were unhappy with the previous one.
Right.
Like, obviously they're discontent. They feel like they're not being taken care of. Otherwise, there wouldn't be all this movement.
Yeah.
And it is very frequent.
Yeah, it's
super
wild.
frequent.
Yeah.
Like, if you had to estimate on a monthly basis how many hours you spend auditing analytics to make sure that things are as accurate as we can make them.
I mean, you could spend all your time and still have more to do.
It's true.
Right. It's just, and this is a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
Ballpark 8 hours.
Sure.
8 hours a month.
Sure.
Yeah.
Easily.
And like Emily said, there's still so much we could fix and
Exactly.
mess with and do, but
so
it's not our only job.
That's the opportunity. If dealers, you were to take anything from this conversation, please have it be this. Number one, we love you. Number two, you have agency to make a real difference and really set your 2023 to being the start of something incredible.
Yeah.
If you invest at the beginning of it.
Yep.
And number three, thank you for listening to all this. Thank you to my esteemed guests.
Thank you for having
Emily,
us,
thank
Dave.
you for taking the time out of your busy days. And thank you to everybody, all our clientele, future clientele. We know you're out there. Happy New Year and happy 2023. So we'll toast.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Peace out, everyone.